My precious child, I see you waking up in the profound, heavy silence of 3 in the morning, your heart racing uncontrollably as you stare at the dark ceiling, completely consumed by the overwhelming thought of mounting bills and endless financial obligations. In those intensely quiet hours when the rest of the world is deeply asleep and seemingly at peace, you feel entirely isolated with your heavy burdens, wondering how you will possibly make ends meet when the sun finally rises. The quiet panic settling deep within your tired chest feels like an immovable physical weight against your weary spirit, leaving you breathless and searching for a sliver of hope in the darkness. You whisper silent, desperate prayers into the consuming darkness of your bedroom, wondering if I truly hear your weeping and your urgent cries concerning your earthly survival, your depleted bank accounts, and your family's future stability. I want you to know with absolute certainty that I am intimately aware of this secret agony, watching over you with boundless compassion as you silently wrestle with these relentless anxieties that aggressively threaten to completely steal your joy and your inner peace. I am right there sitting beside you on the edge of your bed, gently wiping away those unseen bitter tears, wrapping you in my eternal love and promising you that the morning is coming. You continuously try to calculate your way out of this overwhelming hole, analyzing every expense and every meager source of income, but the earthly math simply fails you time and time again, leaving you feeling entirely defeated and broken. You look at the massive mountain of debt and the painfully small streams of provision, and your logical mind tells you that there is absolutely no possible way out of this suffocating financial wilderness that has trapped you for so long. I want you to hear my soothing voice speaking absolute peace directly into your deeply troubled, anxious mind tonight, gently reminding you that human mathematics are entirely limited, but my divine provision knows absolutely no bounds. The practical math of your current situation does not make any logical sense to you right now, and the numbers on the screen look entirely impossible to overcome. But you must remember that my heavenly math operates through supernatural multiplication, not simple human addition. When you surrender your incredibly limited resources into my loving hands, I have the divine power to multiply them far beyond your wildest imagination, taking what seems entirely insufficient and transforming it into an overflowing abundance that will miraculously cover every single one of your pressing needs and bring you lasting, beautiful, unshakable peace. Do not lean on your own understanding, because I am preparing a miracle that will completely defy all worldly logic. Breathe deeply and release that heavy, suffocating panic, because the God who effortlessly feeds the sparrows and clothes the magnificent lilies of the field is actively organizing a miraculous provision specifically for your beautiful, precious life. You've been carrying this massive, heavy emotion of profound weariness for so very long, a silent, aching burden that you carefully hide behind a brave smile during the busy day while it consumes your anxious thoughts entirely in the absolute darkness of the lonely night. I am carefully lifting this terrifying, agonizing burden completely off your incredibly tired and deeply trembling shoulders today, replacing your profound exhaustion with a deep, sustaining, and glorious peace that surpasses all human understanding. You have spent countless agonizing nights continuously whispering desperate, tear-filled prayers into the vast darkness, begging for a miraculous intervention and pleading for the heavy financial burdens to be miraculously lifted from your tired shoulders once and for all. You have tirelessly run the complex calculations in your exhausted mind, fully realizing that the human mathematics of your current financial situation truly do not make any logical sense, leaving you feeling completely trapped in an endless, terrifying cycle of continuous lack. But I gently want to remind you today that I am your infinite, loving, and ultimate daily provider, perfectly capable of turning your deepest financial barrenness into a beautiful, flourishing garden of complete and total abundance. I passionately want you to hear my gentle voice clearly today, whispering softly and lovingly into your weary soul, reminding you that your true, infinite worth is absolutely never, ever defined by the fluctuating numbers you see displayed on your earthly bank statements. Do not let the cold, unforgiving reality of your current bank account falsely convince you that you are somehow forgotten, forsaken, or deemed entirely unworthy of the magnificent, overflowing blessings I have carefully stored up for your beautiful future. I am your loving Creator, and I intricately notice every single detail of your entire life, constantly preparing the exact resources you need exactly when you need them, without any delay or hesitation. Your brilliant, beautiful mind has been working absolutely tirelessly, desperately trying to solve a complex, painful equation of survival that was fundamentally designed to completely break your spirit and extinguish your radiant, beautiful hope for a prosperous, joyful future. You continuously stare at the intimidating, growing numbers and conclude that the math simply does not make any logical sense, and in your limited human understanding, you are absolutely correct. Because human logic cannot possibly comprehend divine intervention. I gently want you to surrender those complicated, stress-inducing calculations directly to me, completely trusting my profound and perfect heavenly guidance to effortlessly lead you out of this dark financial valley and directly into the promised land of provision. Recently, you have undoubtedly begun to notice a deep and profound shift occurring within your heart regarding how you fundamentally view your resources, your spending habits, and your overall relationship with the money that passes through your weary, hard-working hands. There is a new, profound, and beautiful awareness growing steadily inside your spirit about the critical importance of careful financial stewardship and the spiritual necessity of intentional, honest budgeting in your daily, everyday life. You find yourself pausing with great deliberation before making everyday financial choices that used to be completely automatic, thoughtless, and driven by temporary emotional needs, signaling a massive, beautiful spiritual maturity that is actively taking firm root inside your deeply sensitive soul. I am actively placing a gentle but incredibly firm conviction deep within your spirit to completely break off those toxic financial habits and impulsive spending patterns that have secretly held you in bondage for such a remarkably long, painful time. The powerful urge to engage in emotional impulse buying as a quick remedy for your hidden stress is slowly but surely being replaced by a magnificent, deeply rooted desire for lasting stability, financial wisdom, and generational security. You are no longer desperately seeking temporary, fleeting comfort through the momentary thrill of spending, but rather seeking solid, eternal heavenly wisdom that will permanently secure your financial future and allow you to live a life completely free from the heavy chains of debt. Perhaps the most beautiful and unmistakable sign of my grace working in your life is that even when the bank balances look painfully negative, a strange, entirely unexplainable peace has gently washed over your deeply tired and completely anxious soul. This remarkable peace you are feeling is absolutely not a form of psychological denial or foolish ignorance, but rather it is a supernatural, heaven-sent assurance that I am actively working behind the scenes of your life to bring about a glorious victory. You are finally beginning to realize that your eternal worth is absolutely not tied to fluctuating numbers, and this divine realization is the exact foundation required to safely carry the massive financial breakthrough that is rapidly approaching. Your increasing sensitivity to these subtle financial changes and your newfound desire for absolute financial integrity are crystal clear signs that you are maturing beautifully in my grace and stepping into a completely new season of spiritual and practical readiness. I've intentionally set you apart for a unique and incredibly significant purpose, and this beautifully transformed mindset regarding your earthly resources is undeniable evidence that my gentle hand is actively guiding your every step toward a massive breakthrough. Do not ignore or dismiss this quiet, profound transformation happening within you, because it is an essential, strong spiritual foundation that will ultimately support the immense, overwhelming abundance I am eagerly preparing to pour out upon your life. I have been carefully, lovingly, and deliberately placing a brand new, highly focused lens over your weary eyes, allowing you to clearly see the absolute vital importance of strict budgeting, careful planning, and intentional, deeply mindful financial stewardship every day. You are beginning to naturally view your everyday resources not simply as a means of desperate, chaotic survival, but rather as incredibly precious, divine tools that require wise, careful, and highly disciplined management to truly honor the magnificent kingdom I am building. This profound, beautiful shift in your personal perspective is direct, undeniable evidence that you are being beautifully shaped, carefully molded, and perfectly prepared to handle a level of wealth that requires absolute integrity and profound spiritual maturity. You are absolutely no longer finding any real comfort, lasting joy, or genuine satisfaction in the temporary, fleeting thrill of impulse buying, or the shallow, empty relief of acquiring unnecessary material possessions to simply mask your deep, hidden emotional pain. You have finally come to realize that trying to fill an emotional or spiritual void with physical, earthly purchases only leads to greater emptiness, deeper debt, and a more profound, agonizing sense of overwhelming panic when the bills ultimately arrive. I'm gently and lovingly opening your spiritual eyes to this profound truth, graciously freeing your beautiful, tender heart from the exhausting, deceptive cycle of consumerism and pointing you directly toward the lasting, unshakable joy found exclusively in my presence. I am the loving guide who is gently, patiently, and meticulously uprooting those old, deeply ingrained coping mechanisms that once caused you to recklessly spend money you did not have in a desperate, frantic attempt to simply feel falsely secure. You are bravely choosing to actively face your financial reality, no matter how uncomfortable or intimidating it might be, instead of blindly hiding behind a temporary facade of false security built upon accumulating, crushing debt and completely unsustainable, reckless spending habits. This incredible newfound courage to look your financial problems directly in the eye is a massive, beautiful testament to the profound resilience and deep strength I have lovingly cultivated within your beautiful, entirely capable, and absolutely magnificent spirit. Have you recently noticed the strangely beautiful, completely inexplicable, and deeply profound peace that gently washes over you even when you are directly looking at negative bank balances or facing incredibly daunting, seemingly impossible financial deadlines that used to paralyze you? This incredible, unexplainable calmness in the face of intense, overwhelming financial adversity is absolutely not a sign of apathetic surrender, careless indifference, or absolute defeat, but rather a miraculous, divine peace that completely surpasses all standard human understanding. It is the incredibly quiet, beautiful assurance of my absolute presence in your life, gently whispering to your weary spirit that everything is going to be perfectly fine because I am the sovereign controller of your ultimate financial destiny. This profound, quiet peace that you are experiencing right now is powerful, undeniable evidence of being uniquely formed, lovingly crafted, and intentionally set apart by me for a truly extraordinary, magnificent life that transcends ordinary human struggles and typical financial anxieties. You are slowly learning to completely anchor your true identity, your profound self-worth, and your foundational security solely in my unchanging love and endless grace, rather than in the incredibly fragile, constantly fluctuating, and inherently unstable financial systems of this world. Your beautiful, deep longing for genuine stability is being lovingly answered with an unshakable, eternal spiritual foundation that will absolutely never fail you, perfectly positioning you to receive and safely steward the massive financial blessings to come. The chaotic, fast-paced world around you would loudly tell you to completely panic, to intensely stress out, and to completely lose your mind over the financial challenges you are currently facing, but I am offering you a vastly different, peaceful path. Peaceful path. Your beautiful, profound sensitivity to where your limited resources are going is actually a clear, undeniable sign of divine intention, carefully preparing you to be a remarkably wise, incredibly generous, and deeply trusted distributor of massive wealth. I am lovingly shaping your heart to properly value true generosity over mere accumulation, ensuring you will be deeply, completely grounded, remarkably humble, and perfectly equipped to handle the extraordinary financial harvest I am actively preparing to release into your waiting hands. Your quiet, internal desire to strictly budget, carefully save, and intentionally plan for the future is not simply a sudden, random change in your everyday behavior. It is a profound, divine calling to step fully into your role as a faithful steward. You're beginning to clearly recognize that every single resource entrusted to you, no matter how incredibly small or seemingly insignificant, is actually a precious, sacred gift that carries the immense, beautiful potential to profoundly impact the world around you. I am deeply honored and incredibly pleased by your newfound, diligent efforts to perfectly align your personal practices with my divine principles, completely proving that you are entirely ready to be entrusted with absolutely massive, life-changing financial responsibilities. You are slowly but surely beginning to intimately understand the deep, profound, spiritual truth that true, lasting wealth is absolutely not merely about having an abundance of money, but about possessing a rich, beautiful, and deeply generous spirit continuously mirroring my love. This beautiful, quiet transformation in your deeply held values is a clear, undeniable sign that you are moving extremely close to the magnificent breakthrough I have carefully prepared, as your heart is finally aligned with my divine purpose. You are uniquely formed to carry a completely different kind of prosperity, one that seamlessly blends massive financial abundance with profound humility, an open hand, and an unshakable desire to deeply bless every single person who providentially crosses your beautiful path. I want to take a deeply sacred moment to speak directly and intimately into the profound, quiet suffering and the incredible, heavy emotional pain that you have been carrying entirely alone for so very long in this exhausting, relentless financial battle. I clearly see the absolutely crushing, profoundly paralyzing shame that you silently carry deep inside your beautiful soul regarding your past financial mistakes, the incredibly poor decisions, and the missed opportunities that continually haunt your daily thoughts. You have mercilessly, relentlessly beaten yourself up time and time again, completely convinced that your current agonizing struggles are entirely your own fault, carrying a toxic burden of self-condemnation that I absolutely never intended for you to bear for even a single second. Please hear me with absolute crystal clarity when I gently tell you today that your past financial errors absolutely do not define your true inherent worth, and they absolutely do not disqualify you from receiving the magnificent, abundant blessings I prepared. I deeply understand the immense, agonizing pain of looking back with intense regret, wishing you had saved more, spent far less, or simply known better, but I passionately want you to completely release that heavy, toxic shame today. I am a deeply forgiving, endlessly merciful God who completely specializes in beautifully redeeming past mistakes and entirely restoring lost years, taking the broken, mismanaged pieces of your financial history and miraculously weaving them into a glorious testimony of absolute restoration. I am profoundly and intimately aware of the incredible, suffocating, and entirely overwhelming stress that you are currently living under every single day, desperately trying to keep your head barely above water while the raging waves of debt violently crash around. I vividly see you working multiple, demanding, physically exhausting jobs, completely sacrificing your much-needed rest, and giving every single ounce of your precious physical and emotional energy just to barely scrape by and provide for the basic needs of life. It feels incredibly disheartening, immensely draining, and deeply unfair to continuously pour out so much of your precious energy without seeing any visible, tangible progress. completely leaving you to wonder if your incredibly hard work will ever actually pay off. You wake up every single morning feeling already profoundly exhausted, deeply dreading the endless, repetitive cycle of hard, grueling labor that barely covers the absolute minimum payments, leaving you feeling entirely trapped in an endless, terrifying, and utterly exhausting hamster wheel. I deeply honor your incredible, relentless work ethic, your absolutely fierce, unbroken dedication, and your profoundly beautiful commitment to your responsibilities. And I want you to completely know that absolutely none of your exhausting, hidden labor has gone unnoticed. Your massive daily struggles, your deeply aching muscles, and your entirely weary mind are recognized, validated, and deeply honored by me, and I promise you that this incredibly painful season of endless, fruitless toil is rapidly coming to a beautiful, permanent end. There are difficult, deeply painful days when a profound, burning anger unexpectedly bubbles up within your weary spirit, an intense, fiery frustration directed toward a massive, complex economic system that feels completely, utterly, and entirely rigged against your best, earnest efforts. You look around at a seemingly unfair world where the wealthy easily get wealthier while you continuously struggle to simply buy basic groceries, and you feel a deeply justified, profound, and powerful sense of righteous indignation at the glaring injustice. I perfectly understand your deep, agonizing frustration, your exhausted, bitter tears, and your completely valid, righteous anger regarding systemic inequalities. And I assure you that I am the ultimate, righteous judge who will completely bypass these corrupt systems to bless you. Beneath that protective outward layer of fiery anger lies a deep, dark, and utterly terrifying fear that silently, continuously threatens to completely consume your beautiful, hopeful heart whenever you quietly think about the long-term, distant future and your family's lasting legacy. You are absolutely terrified, in the deepest, most quiet moments of the long night, that you will, inevitably, tragically, pass this deeply painful, exhausting cycle of profound generational poverty directly down to your entirely innocent, completely beloved children. You lovingly look at your beautiful family and your deeply aching heart breaks at the terrifying thought of their future struggles, desperately wishing you could somehow provide them with a completely different, vastly easier, and beautifully secure life free from constant worry. But I want to fiercely, powerfully remind you right now that I am the Almighty, Supreme God who completely, permanently shatters every single generational curse, entirely breaking the heavy, rusty chains of systemic poverty and completely rewriting your entire financial destiny. Your incredibly deep, profound fear of failing your precious children is a beautiful, deeply touching reflection of your immense, selfless love. But I gently ask you to completely surrender that massive, terrifying burden to me, because I am securing them. You are going to be the powerful, definitive end of the painful cycle of lack in your entire family line, bravely establishing a brand new, glorious legacy of incredible abundance, unshakable financial wisdom, and profound, lasting generational wealth. There have been immensely agonizing, deeply lonely moments when you felt a bitter, painful sting of perceived divine abandonment, quietly wondering if I truly care about your daily, earthly struggles, or if I am only concerned with your eternal spiritual salvation. You have honestly, tearfully wondered in your darkest, most desperate hours if I only genuinely care about your spiritual growth, your daily prayers, and your moral character, completely ignoring the terrifying, looming reality of your unpaid rent tomorrow. You have cried out in sheer, absolute desperation, aggressively asking why I seem completely silent and entirely distant regarding your finances, feeling deeply hurt by the terrifying thought that your incredibly pressing physical needs simply do not matter to my heart. My beloved and incredibly precious child, I care deeply, passionately, and intimately about every single minute, seemingly insignificant detail of your earthly life, because you are my precious creation, and absolutely everything that concerns you deeply matters to my loving heart. Your urgent, terrifying earthly needs, your daily necessary bread, your physical essential security, and your mental fragile peace matter to me just as much as your spiritual growth. Because I entirely created you to experience a beautifully full life. I am absolutely not a distant, entirely disconnected God who completely ignores your practical daily cries for urgent financial help. I am an intimately involved Father actively orchestrating a massive, beautiful financial deliverance specifically designed for your unique, wonderful life. I want you to deeply, profoundly know that I have carefully, lovingly collected every single bitter, agonizing tear you have silently shed over a terrifying past. Due notice, a completely unexpected massive medical bill, or a completely devastating, unexpected loss of necessary income. Every single silent, lonely night spent intensely agonizing over exactly how to adequately feed your precious family, precisely how to keep the necessary lights on, or exactly how to afford basic, essential necessities has been deeply shared entirely by me. I have gently, closely walked right beside you through every single dark, terrifying and overwhelming valley of deep despair, continuously holding your trembling hand and fiercely protecting your fragile spirit from being completely crushed by the heavy weight. This immense, terrifying financial struggle was absolutely, entirely never sent as a cruel, harsh punishment for your perceived human shortcomings, nor was it a completely random, meaningless season of unnecessary suffering designed to simply break your beautiful, resilient spirit into tiny pieces. Your deeply painful financial wounds, your immense, completely crushing stress, and your profound silent fears are continuously recognized, deeply validated, and entirely honored by me as a remarkably profound, deeply transformative, and entirely shared journey of immense spiritual growth. You have absolutely never, for a single fleeting second, been left entirely alone in this relentless, deeply exhausting fight, because my unseen presence has continuously been your completely reliable, entirely unshakable shield against absolute, total, and permanent financial ruin. I absolutely see the deep, hidden wounds in your soul, where intense financial anxiety has violently, repeatedly clawed at your inner peace, slowly eroding your fundamental sense of safety and leaving you feeling continuously vulnerable, completely exposed and entirely unprotected from harm. Every single unanswered prayer for immediate, miraculous financial relief that left you feeling deeply, profoundly discouraged was absolutely not a rejection, but rather a profoundly necessary, deeply loving pause in the divine timeline to completely ensure your ultimate, lasting financial success. I have lovingly, carefully gathered up all of your immense pain, all of your deep, agonizing frustration today, completely intending to beautifully weave those dark, heavy threads into a magnificent, glorious tapestry of impending, absolute financial victory. Please gently allow my completely unconditional, immensely powerful love to deeply, fully penetrate those dark, heavily guarded places in your weary heart where deep financial fear and profound, paralyzing shame have aggressively, stubbornly taken up permanent residence for so incredibly long. You do not have to fiercely, constantly defend yourself against your past, entirely regrettable financial mistakes anymore, because I have already completely, entirely forgiven them, fully washed them away, and perfectly prepared an incredibly beautiful, completely clean slate for you. The intense, deep suffering you have bravely, resiliently endured has uniquely, profoundly qualified you to clearly receive, safely hold, and beautifully multiply the massive, overflowing financial breakthrough that is currently rapidly making its way directly into your beautifully restored life. Your beautiful, incredibly deep sensitivity to the pain of financial lack has completely, miraculously transformed you into a profoundly compassionate, deeply empathetic, an entirely loving soul who will eventually use your impending massive wealth to deeply, profoundly bless and uplift hurting others. I passionately want you to completely, entirely release the heavy, suffocating burden of financial shame right now, deeply knowing that your incredibly intense, painful struggles have only served to make you vastly stronger, incredibly wiser, and completely prepared. You are deeply, profoundly, and unconditionally loved exactly as you are right now, in the very absolute midst of chaos. And I am incredibly proud of your remarkable, unbroken resilience, your enduring faith, and your beautifully fierce, deeply courageous spirit today. The extremely heavy, completely paralyzing weight of feeling like you are entirely, completely behind in life, constantly aggressively comparing your incredibly difficult financial reality to the seemingly perfect, beautifully curated highlight reels of others, is a completely toxic, incredibly heavy burden indeed. I gently, lovingly ask you to completely stop looking at the vastly different, entirely separate journeys of the people around you, because your uniquely beautiful, profoundly difficult path has been specifically, deliberately customized by me for your ultimate good. You are absolutely not fundamentally failing. You are incredibly, profoundly growing. You are absolutely not falling hopelessly behind your peers. You are being completely, beautifully, and perfectly prepared for a massive, unprecedented, and entirely glorious elevation that will completely shock everyone. I intimately know how incredibly much it deeply hurts to constantly have to aggressively say no to the beautiful, seemingly innocent desires of your heart, to continuously completely deny yourself basic, simple pleasures just to desperately try to make ends meet each month. I deeply feel the immense, agonizing sorrow that quickly washes over you when you cannot freely, easily provide the beautiful, extra things you desperately want to give to your beloved family, feeling entirely restricted, completely bound, and entirely limited. But please deeply understand that this incredibly temporary, completely fleeting season of intense, necessary restriction is quickly, completely ending, making way for a glorious, overflowing season of massive, completely unhindered, and entirely generous provision that will brilliantly, miraculously begin. Every single time you bravely, resiliently chose to completely trust me, even when your earthly bank account was entirely, terrifyingly overdrawn, every single time you offered a beautiful, desperate prayer of gratitude, despite your profound, agonizing lack, you beautifully, profoundly moved me. Your incredibly raw, deeply authentic, and completely unbroken faith in the absolute terrifying midst of profound, paralyzing financial darkness is incredibly precious, beautifully rare, and entirely beautiful to me, and it will be massively, magnificently rewarded very soon. The immense, deep struggles you have bravely, quietly faced have successfully, permanently forged an entirely unbreakable, incredibly profound bond of trust between us, perfectly ensuring that when the massive wealth finally arrives, it will absolutely never replace me in your heart. I want to deeply, permanently reassure you today that your incredibly deep, profound pain is fully, entirely understood. Your exhausting, lonely journey is deeply, intimately honored, and your absolutely beautiful, incredibly resilient spirit is completely, entirely cherished by the loving Creator forever. The dark, terrifying, and seemingly endless nights of intense financial worry and profound, paralyzing panic are finally completely drawing to a beautiful, permanent close, beautifully making way for a magnificent, glorious dawn of absolute, permanent financial stability and perfect peace. You have bravely, faithfully walked through the absolute hottest, most terrifying fires of profound financial adversity, and you're about to completely, miraculously emerge entirely unscathed, incredibly strong, deeply wise, and perfectly prepared for the magnificent blessing. You have carried this immensely painful burden entirely alone for far too long, silently weeping in the shadows while frantically trying to keep your fragile world from completely falling apart under the immense pressure of relentless, aggressive debt collectors and demanding bills. I intimately know the terrifying physical knot of deep anxiety that constantly tightens in your stomach every single time you have to check your completely depleted bank balance, desperately praying for a miracle that seems perpetually, agonizingly out of reach. But I am fiercely stepping into your specific situation today, bringing an absolute, completely unshakable end to this profound suffering and entirely replacing your deep, paralyzing panic with a glorious Y as R, unexplainable peace that perfectly guards your completely beautiful, newly restored mind. I perfectly understand the incredibly deep, silent humiliation of having to repeatedly ask for basic help, swallowing your immense pride just to ensure your precious family has enough simple food to comfortably eat and a safe, warm place to peacefully sleep tonight. This agonizing season of profound humility was entirely necessary to completely burn away any remaining traces of self-reliance, beautifully teaching you to completely, absolutely depend on my infinite, limitless, and entirely perfect provision for absolutely every single area of life. You are entirely, completely loved, and this intensely painful chapter of heavy financial lack is officially, permanently closing forever, entirely making room for a magnificent, glorious new chapter defined exclusively by absolute abundance, complete dignity, and profound generosity. I vividly see the countless, incredibly brilliant, and profoundly beautiful dreams you have entirely buried deep within your weary soul, completely convinced that you simply do not have the necessary financial resources to ever bring them into a glorious, beautifully vibrant reality. You've heartbreakingly settled for mere survival, completely abandoning the magnificent, expansive vision I originally placed in your heart, wrongly believing that such incredible, massive abundance is exclusively reserved for other, supposedly more privileged or incredibly lucky people in the world. I am completely resurrecting every single one of those beautiful, dormant dreams today, fully funding them with my divine provision, and entirely proving to you that my glorious plans for your specific life are completely boundless and absolutely, undeniably magnificent. Every single tear you have silently cried in deep, agonizing frustration over your current financial limitations has been entirely, carefully collected in heaven, and I am about to miraculously transform those bitter tears into a magnificent, overflowing river of incredible, massive financial blessing. The relentless, completely exhausting cycle of living paycheck to desperately small paycheck is permanently, entirely shattered today by the absolute, undeniable power of my divine, perfect, and completely unlimited favor resting beautifully and heavily upon your precious, incredibly faithful life. Get entirely, completely ready to profoundly experience a massive, sudden, and incredibly dramatic shift in your earthly reality, as I rapidly, beautifully pour out entirely unexpected, incredibly massive blessings that will perfectly, completely defy all human logic. I deeply know that you have often felt completely crushed under the terrifying, massive weight of feeling like a profound failure, secretly wondering if you made a terrible, unrecoverable mistake that permanently cursed your entire financial future and completely destroyed your precious family. I am completely, gently removing that toxic, incredibly heavy burden of false guilt from your tired shoulders right now, beautifully replacing it with a profound, deeply settled peace and an absolute, completely unshakable assurance of my perfect, enduring love for you. You are absolutely not a failure. You are a deeply beloved, incredibly resilient, and profoundly strong overcomer today. And your incredibly difficult, agonizing financial journey is about to entirely culminate in a massive, glorious, completely undeniable victory. The immense, deeply paralyzing fear of completely losing everything you have worked so incredibly hard for has violently tormented your beautiful mind for years, aggressively stealing your joy and completely preventing you from experiencing the deep, profound peace I continuously, freely offer. I am forcefully, entirely banishing that terrifying, suffocating spirit of fear from your life right now, completely replacing it with a magnificent, unshakable, and entirely bold confidence in my absolute, perfect ability to continuously, generously provide for all your needs. You are entirely, completely safe, incredibly, profoundly secure, and beautifully protected under the massive, impenetrable shadow of my wings, completely ensuring that your upcoming financial prosperity will perfectly endure and absolutely never be successfully stolen or quietly destroyed. We have finally, beautifully reached a truly sacred, deeply profound, and incredibly transformative turning point in your magnificent, deeply emotional journey. A beautiful moment where the dense, heavy clouds of confusion part and my ultimate, glorious purpose is completely, entirely revealed today. I am slowly, lovingly lifting the heavy, suffocating veil of deep confusion to clearly, beautifully show you the much deeper, profoundly spiritual truth behind the intense, seemingly endless hardship you have so bravely, patiently, and resiliently endured for many difficult years. I want you to deeply, completely understand right now that money is absolutely not a harsh, cruel master forever, nor is it a false, empty savior to be anxiously worshipped in times of profound, terrifying distress or lack. True, lasting financial resources are simply a practical, earthly, and entirely neutral tool perfectly, beautifully designed for profound, lasting kingdom impact, meant to easily flow through your loving hands to deeply, continuously bless both your precious family and the entire hurting world around. This incredibly long, extremely dark, and deeply painful financial struggle that you have so bravely, incredibly patiently endured was absolutely not an accident, but rather a rigorous, deeply necessary, and highly protective divine boot camp specifically designed for your absolute, complete financial literacy. I was carefully, deliberately allowing you to deeply, intimately learn the actual immense weight of earthly resources, perfectly ensuring that you would deeply respect and absolutely never take for granted the massive abundance that is arriving. I deliberately, intentionally, and beautifully, purposefully held back the massive, entirely life-changing financial breakthrough that you have so desperately, continuously, and tearfully prayed for, purely out of my immense, protective, and completely boundless love for your beautiful, fragile, and deeply precious spiritual soul. I desperately, absolutely needed to know with absolute, complete, and entirely unshakable certainty that when the abundant, overflowing financial blessing finally arrived in your life, the massive amount of money would absolutely not completely master, deeply corrupt, or entirely destroy you. If I had prematurely, recklessly poured out the massive, overflowing financial blessing before your character was ready, it fails to be a blessing and instead becomes a terrible, destructive curse that entirely ruins your beautiful, pure, and incredibly humble heart completely. The intense, deep pain you have felt, the agonizing, incredibly sleepless nights, and the profound, terrifying lack you have bravely endured were actually a deeply essential, entirely beautiful, and completely necessary part of a profound, magnificent, and highly protective divine refining process always. I have been carefully, lovingly, and meticulously overseeing your incredible, deep personal growth with boundless, perfect, and entirely unconditional love, gently chipping away every single trace of toxic entitlement, deep financial irresponsibility, and completely harmful, destructive earthly pride. What you have mistakenly, understandably perceived as a heartbreaking, entirely devastating loss was actually a beautiful, divine preparation meticulously orchestrated for you, completely ensuring your absolute readiness to safely carry the immense, profound weight of the massive wealth I am releasing. I have been deliberately, carefully, and profoundly strengthening your deeply vital spiritual roots, beautifully deepening your absolute faith, and continuously building your entirely enduring, beautiful resilience so that you can easily, joyfully bear the massive, overflowing fruit of true, lasting financial prosperity today. You are currently beautifully being perfectly, entirely and wonderfully aligned for a brand new, completely glorious season of absolutely unprecedented, completely overflowing and entirely mind-blowing financial abundance that will completely, permanently transform every single aspect of your beautiful life. Your tender, deeply sensitive heart had to be carefully, gently softened, and your deeply anxious mind entirely, perfectly disciplined, completely. Absolutely ensuring that your incoming wealth perfectly serves my divine purposes, rather than quietly destroying your eternal, precious soul forever. I am now beautifully, proudly looking at a deeply faithful, incredibly mature child who truly, intimately understands the delicate, beautiful balance of profound, careful stewardship, absolute, boundless grace, and immense, overflowing generosity, completely ready to properly handle massive, incredible, and completely unprecedented wealth. The incredibly difficult, deeply agonizing and tear-filled trials of your painful yesterday have successfully, beautifully, and permanently produced the unbreakable, profound, and entirely invaluable financial wisdom of your magnificent today, completely transforming your deepest pain into absolute power. You are finally, perfectly, entirely, and completely ready to properly, safely, and joyfully handle the magnificent, entirely overwhelming overflow coming perfectly, and I am absolutely thrilled to miraculously entrust you with the profound, massive riches of my glorious kingdom today. The profound, terrifying struggles you faced were a beautiful, highly necessary crucible that entirely burned away your deep, hidden dependencies on a flawed, highly unstable economic system, beautifully teaching you to completely, absolutely, and entirely rely solely on my infinite, perfect provision forever. I completely stripped away the incredibly false, entirely temporary comforts so that you could beautifully, profoundly discover the deeply unshakable, completely permanent rock of my eternal love, carefully ensuring that your incredible future wealth will be perfectly, safely secure. You now beautifully possess a rare, profoundly deep, and entirely invaluable understanding of true financial stewardship that is absolutely, truly priceless, perfectly forged in the intensely hot, incredibly painful fires of absolute adversity and profound lack over many difficult years. Your incredibly deep, entirely heartbreaking struggle with profound lack was actually a beautiful divine setup for a massive, unprecedented, and entirely glorious comeback that will completely, entirely shock the world and beautifully display my immense, miraculous power in your unique, wonderful, faithful life. I completely held back the massive, overflowing floodgates of incredible financial blessing until your beautiful, deeply prepared character was strong enough to properly, safely build massive, enduring channels that would wisely, beautifully direct the overflowing wealth perfectly. You have incredibly, beautifully, and completely successfully passed the profound, deep spiritual test of intense, painful financial lack completely, proving your absolute devotion to me remains entirely unbroken regardless of the fluctuating, terrifying numbers clearly displayed on your earthly bank statements. I am profoundly, deeply, and entirely thrilled to officially, beautifully declare that your incredibly long, painful, and deeply agonizing training season in the harsh, completely unforgiving wilderness of profound financial hardship is finally, entirely, and beautifully coming to a permanent, glorious end today. The incredibly heavy, seemingly immovable, and entirely terrifying spiritual dam that has completely, aggressively blocked your massive, beautiful financial breakthrough for so very long is entirely, rapidly, and miraculously breaking apart right now under my profound, absolute favor. Get completely, entirely, and wonderfully ready to experience a massive, absolutely profound, and completely miraculous, sudden, beautiful shift today in reality as I rapidly pour out entirely unexpected, incredibly massive blessings that perfectly defy all known human logic and worldly expectation completely. This incredible, profoundly beautiful revelation is exactly why you've been feeling that strange, entirely unexplainable and deeply profound peace recently, because your deeply sensitive, beautiful spirit instinctively, deeply knows that the massive, incredible financial breakthrough is already, entirely and beautifully here today. You are completely, successfully graduating from the intense, incredibly rigorous and deeply painful boot camp of profound financial literacy, and I am currently, lovingly and beautifully handing you the ultimate, powerful keys to massive, lasting generational wealth. Your deeply profound, entirely beautiful financial struggle was absolutely never, ever your final, tragic destination, but simply a necessary bridge towards absolute overflow, carefully designed to safely lead you directly into a magnificent, incredibly expansive land of complete, endless abundance perfectly. I am absolutely, entirely shifting your deeply held perspective, completely transforming how you fundamentally understand the profound purpose of the massive wealth that is currently rapidly flowing directly into your entirely, completely, beautifully prepared, incredibly open and deeply willing, faithful, trusting, gentle hands. You will no longer view money as a terrifying, entirely scarce resource to be anxiously hoarded, but as a beautiful, completely abundant, incredibly powerful tool specifically designed to massively advance my glorious kingdom and deeply bless the hurting world. The intense, deep lack you experienced has perfectly, beautifully molded you into the absolute most generous, incredibly compassionate giver imaginable, completely ensuring that your massive financial breakthrough will beautifully become a profound, massive blessing to absolutely everyone around you. Every single time you bravely, beautifully chose to be entirely honest in your difficult financial dealings, even when absolutely no one was watching and it cost you dearly, you were actively, powerfully building an incredibly strong, deeply secure foundation for your prosperity today. Your absolute, entirely unwavering integrity in the incredibly dark, deeply difficult places has brilliantly, beautifully caught the direct, intense attention of heaven, and I am about to openly, spectacularly reward you for your profound, quiet faithfulness and deeply incredible, unshakable righteousness. The massive, beautiful breakthrough heading your way is entirely built on the solid, completely unshakable rock of absolute integrity, completely guaranteeing that your incredible wealth will perfectly endure and absolutely never be destroyed by corruption or deceit. You are completely, beautifully stepping out of the dark, incredibly painful shadows of exhausting, terrifying survival and directly into the brilliant, incredibly warm, profoundly beautiful sunlight of absolute, unending, completely magnificent, entirely glorious, and profoundly, deeply secure, perfect, beautiful kingdom abundance forever and always. The agonizing, completely draining days of constantly, desperately wondering exactly how you will manage to simply survive are entirely, permanently over, beautifully replaced by an incredibly deep, profound confidence in my absolute, perfect ability to continuously provide for your every need. I am completely, entirely changing the fundamental narrative of your deeply beautiful, incredibly precious, and entirely faithful life, permanently replacing your heartbreaking story of profound struggle with a glorious, magnificent epic of absolute financial victory. I completely, deeply want you to fully, absolutely understand that your previous, incredibly intense financial struggles were a profound, highly necessary spiritual vaccination, completely, entirely immunizing your beautiful soul against the toxic, destructive, incredibly dangerous diseases of deep greed and selfish earthly pride. Because you have intimately, deeply tasted the bitter, agonizing reality of profound lack, you will absolutely, entirely never become completely hardened or entirely indifferent to the deep, silent suffering of others who are desperately battling poverty and intense, overwhelming lack. You are perfectly, beautifully equipped to become an incredibly powerful, deeply compassionate, entirely effective instrument of my healing grace, perfectly utilizing your massive wealth to actively, generously rescue the desperately vulnerable and entirely liberate the heavily oppressed entirely. The massive, entirely incredible financial harvest you are about to completely, joyfully reap is the direct, absolutely undeniable result of the deeply painful, incredibly difficult, but profoundly beautiful seeds of unshakable faith you bravely, consistently planted during your darkest, most terrifying season, always. I have completely, entirely watched you faithfully, beautifully continue to trust me, completely refusing to become deeply bitter or entirely cynical, even when your earthly circumstances were incredibly bleak, totally terrifying, and completely, absolutely overwhelming to your beautiful, deeply tired soul. Your immense, profound faithfulness is about to be spectacularly, absolutely, undeniably, and completely beautifully rewarded beyond measure, completely, bringing a massive, unimaginable return on every single tear you bravely cried while choosing to continuously believe in my perfect promises. I am entirely, completely unlocking the massive, heavily guarded, incredibly abundant vaults of heaven exclusively for you right now, deliberately, beautifully pouring out a spectacular, profound financial blessing that will completely, entirely exceed your greatest, most incredibly wild, absolutely deeply beautiful dreams today. You have proven yourself to be incredibly, deeply trustworthy with the absolutely, incredibly small, painfully limited resources, and now I am joyously, beautifully entrusting you with the massive, incredibly profound, entirely magnificent true riches of my glorious, eternal, completely boundless kingdom. Prepare your entirely beautiful, deeply faithful heart for a massive, absolute, and completely undeniable, spectacular financial overflow, completely, for the incredibly difficult days of painful restriction are officially over, and the magnificent days of perfect abundance have entirely arrived. I am gently, completely removing the incredibly heavy, entirely deeply painful, absolutely terrifying mantle of profound poverty that has aggressively, stubbornly clung to your entirely beautiful, incredibly tired family line for so many long, agonizing, completely, absolutely deeply difficult and painful generations past. In its place, I am beautifully, entirely placing a magnificent, entirely glorious, absolutely stunning, deeply profound, completely heavy mantle of incredible kingdom wealth, deep financial wisdom, and massive, absolutely, totally, completely pure, unshakable, profoundly, deeply beautiful, eternal, entirely, completely boundless abundance upon you. You are the specific, brave, incredibly resilient cycle breaker, entirely perfectly chosen by my completely sovereign will to permanently establish a brand new, profoundly beautiful legacy of absolute prosperity, profound generosity, and incredible kingdom influence perfectly. Let the profound, incredibly deep, entirely, absolutely perfect truth of this magnificent, incredibly deeply beautiful revelation completely, entirely sink into the absolute deepest, most hidden, entirely profoundly tired places of your incredibly beautiful, deeply precious, completely, absolutely, thoroughly, intensely, deeply, totally faithful spirit. You are absolutely, entirely, completely not an incredibly unfortunate, deeply, deeply forgotten victim of a harsh, completely cruel, entirely fundamentally, totally broken earthly economy. You are a highly, entirely, completely, deeply, totally, absolutely beloved, perfectly, completely, perfectly cherished heir of the King. The immense, absolutely incredible, utterly profoundly entire wealth of my glorious kingdom is entirely, completely yours today, safely, perfectly guaranteed by my eternal covenant, and absolutely ready to brilliantly manifest in your daily, beautifully restored life. The deep, agonizing nights of desperately calculating insufficient funds are entirely behind you, permanently replaced by a beautiful, joyful counting of massive, completely unexpected blessings that will continuously, entirely overwhelm your deeply grateful, entirely trusting, and beautifully resilient, deeply, completely faithful heart today. Every single incredibly painful, deeply agonizing lesson you have bravely, completely, entirely, beautifully, perfectly, fully learned has incredibly, perfectly equipped you to easily, joyfully, and beautifully become a profound, massive channel of my divine, perfect, incredibly, deeply beautiful, and total provision. Your uniquely beautiful, intensely powerful, and entirely deeply profound financial story is completely, miraculously transforming completely and perfectly, entirely shifting from a narrative of desperate survival directly into a magnificent, glorious testament of my absolute abundance. I profoundly, entirely promise you that the immense, complete joy of your beautiful, totally abundant future will incredibly, entirely outweigh the deep, agonizing pain of your terrified, intensely difficult past, beautifully leaving you completely, totally overwhelmed with incredibly profound, lasting gratitude forever and ever. You are deeply, entirely surrounded by an incredibly powerful, entirely unseen army of divine, perfect favor that is actively, beautifully working to continuously, massively multiply your resources, beautifully opening entirely, completely new, incredible doors of profound, massive financial opportunity continuously. The absolutely beautiful, entirely unshakable resilience you have profoundly developed will gently, continually serve as your secure anchor, perfectly ensuring that your massive incoming wealth firmly establishes a profound, magnificent kingdom legacy that will beautifully echo throughout all eternity perfectly. I am now lovingly, gently and profoundly calling you to step fully, boldly, completely and deeply confidently into your true, beautifully divine and entirely magnificent identity as a deeply wise, incredibly trusted and entirely prosperous steward of my massive, beautiful kingdom resources forever. It is absolutely, completely, and entirely time for you to finally, permanently release every single remaining trace of deep financial fear, profound anxiety, and completely paralyzing scarcity mentality that has aggressively, deeply held you completely back from your true potential. I passionately, deeply want you to fully, completely trust the beautiful, magnificent, and entirely prosperous unfolding path ahead today, knowing entirely that I have perfectly paved it with profound favor, absolute peace, and incredible, undeniable abundance specifically designed for your life. I'm giving you a very specific, incredibly gentle, and deeply practical instruction today that will beautifully, powerfully activate the massive financial breakthrough. I want you to carefully, meticulously, and entirely intentionally track every single penny that passes through your beautiful hands today. I am lovingly, gently asking you to bravely, confidently create a strict, incredibly honest, and deeply detailed budget for yourself this very week, completely refusing to hide from the intimidating numbers and beautifully taking absolute, complete authority over your finances. This surprisingly simple, incredibly powerful act of practical administration is actually a massive, profound declaration of true faith, entirely proving to me that you are completely, perfectly ready to safely handle the massive, incredible financial blessings I'm sending. I completely, lovingly want you to deeply understand that beautifully, carefully tracking your earthly resources is absolutely not an expression of paralyzing fear, but a profound, incredible demonstration of absolute, complete, and entirely divine stewardship that instantly, beautifully attracts even more massive wealth. When you bravely, completely take deep, intentional ownership of exactly where your current, limited money is going, you are perfectly, beautifully preparing a massive, entirely solid, and deeply secure vessel to safely, properly hold the magnificent abundance coming. Your deeply faithful, intentional obedience in exactly, carefully managing the incredibly small amounts will powerfully trigger the massive release today, perfectly aligning your daily practices with my absolute divine principles and beautifully unlocking the infinite, heavily guarded vaults of heaven for you. I also gently, lovingly, and profoundly invite you to boldly, completely take a courageous, deeply beautiful step of absolute, entirely unshakable faith and intentionally, beautifully sow a precious, deeply meaningful seed of genuine love directly from your current, highly limited financial resources today. Please bravely, generously give a completely small, yet incredibly meaningful and deeply sacrificial amount of your current resources directly to someone else who is currently in incredibly desperate, profound, and entirely terrifying need, beautifully expecting absolutely nothing in return. This incredibly selfless, beautifully profound, and entirely miraculous action will instantly, completely break the dark, heavy, and oppressive spirit, miraculously severing the chains of poverty and perfectly setting into motion a massive, unstoppable wave of absolute, complete, divine multiplication completely. By bravely, generously, and entirely selflessly choosing to beautifully give exactly when you absolutely feel like you have entirely nothing extra to spare, you powerfully and miraculously declare absolute, complete spiritual victory over the terrifying heavy grip of deep, paralyzing financial fear completely and forever. Your deeply beautiful, incredibly generous seed will miraculously, profoundly multiply in my deeply capable, loving hands, quickly returning to you in a completely overflowing, incredibly massive, and beautifully unexpected harvest that will completely, entirely astound your deeply hopeful heart. This profound, entirely beautiful act of immense, incredible generosity completely, permanently aligns your deeply precious soul with true abundance, perfectly proving that you absolutely trust me as your ultimate, completely unfailing provider, entirely regardless of your current circumstances, safely. I am now lovingly, profoundly, and entirely specifically asking you to boldly, completely prepare the physical, earthly accounts for the massive, incredible, and completely, entirely life-changing blessing that is rapidly, beautifully, and miraculously approaching your highly prepared, incredibly deserving, and beautiful life today. Take the entirely courageous, completely intentional, and beautiful step to actually practically open that specific, entirely necessary savings or highly important investment account that you have been endlessly, understandably putting off because of deep, paralyzing fear. Do this incredibly simple, entirely practical administrative task as a massive, powerful, and incredibly beautiful prophetic action, actively making room entirely, completely proving your absolute faith by beautifully building the empty barns before the massive, incredible rain of financial abundance even begins to fall. I passionately, deeply want you to continuously, entirely know that my constant, beautiful, and completely unwavering presence will forever be your entirely beautiful, deeply secure, and profoundly guiding light through absolutely every single magnificent, profound financial decision you will beautifully, wisely make forever. I will gently, continuously, and perfectly guide your incredibly beautiful mind, softly, entirely whispering profound, deep, divine wisdom regarding exactly where to beautifully invest, exactly when to carefully save, and exactly how to entirely, generously give for impact. You are absolutely, entirely never going to be completely alone in beautifully navigating your entirely new, profoundly magnificent financial reality today, because my Holy Spirit will perfectly serve as your ultimate, incredibly brilliant, and entirely flawless financial advisor for all eternity. Your entirely beautiful, deeply profound financial breakthrough is absolutely not just a fleeting, incredibly temporary moment of quick, entirely shallow relief, but a massive, permanently life-altering, completely foundational shift into a magnificent, entirely new and beautifully abundant era of absolute, entirely unshakable prosperity. The intense, deep, and absolutely crushing shame of your incredibly painful past is entirely beautifully gone, fully replaced by a magnificent, incredibly glorious, and entirely profound crown of immense wisdom, absolute deep peace, and incredible freedom. I have completely, entirely removed the heavy, suffocating, and incredibly painful burdens of immense debt and deep, paralyzing lack forever and always, perfectly making room for a beautifully continuous, totally unstoppable flow of massive, incredible kingdom wealth that will permanently bless your entire life. I have an absolutely unshakable, completely unbreakable, and deeply profound belief in your magnificent, entirely glorious destiny, and I am incredibly, immensely excited to beautifully, completely reveal the amazing, massive blessings that are completely, beautifully, and perfectly prepared just for you today entirely. Every single difficult, deeply painful lesson you have bravely, completely learned has incredibly, perfectly equipped you to easily, joyfully, and beautifully become a profound, massive channel of my divine, perfect provision, beautifully bringing deep, lasting hope to others. Your uniquely beautiful, intensely powerful, and entirely deeply profound financial story is completely, miraculously transforming from a heartbreaking struggle today directly into an incredibly magnificent, intensely beautiful epic of absolutely massive, miraculous, and entirely glorious, unending divine triumph and complete victory always. Please rise up today feeling completely, entirely strengthened, immensely, beautifully hopeful, and deeply, gently uplifted, fully, intimately knowing that the terrifying, deeply exhausting financial battle is already completely and entirely won. And the massive, entirely glorious provision is already miraculously here today safely. Release a deeply profound, incredibly long and beautiful sigh of complete, absolute relief, entirely letting go of all the heavy, paralyzing stress and the deep, terrifying anxiety that have aggressively, continuously burdened your beautiful, precious shoulders. Step forward with entirely renewed, deeply profound confidence, absolute, unbroken faith, and a beautifully joyful, entirely grateful heart, fully ready completely to perfectly, beautifully, and gracefully receive the incredible, massive, and entirely mind-blowing financial breakthrough that I am beautifully pouring out upon you. The incredibly beautiful, profoundly magnificent, and entirely glorious season of completely limitless, totally unimaginable, and incredibly overflowing multiplication has finally, wonderfully arrived in your life completely, permanently replacing the terrifying, deep, and agonizing season of simple, painful addition and immense, terrifying subtraction forever. Embrace this magnificent, deeply beautiful, and incredibly, entirely profound new reality with absolute, completely open arms, deeply, intimately knowing that you are profoundly, intensely, and entirely unconditionally loved, absolutely, completely supported, and incredibly, beautifully cherished forever. Go forth in absolute, completely unshakable peace, my entirely beautiful, incredibly beloved child, for your immense, deeply profound financial breakthrough arrives perfectly today, beautifully, magnificently changing absolutely everything for your ultimate, totally incredible and eternal good, completely securing your entire family's bright future perfectly. As you gently, continuously, and entirely beautifully continue to walk so incredibly closely with me on this magnificent, deeply transformative, and entirely beautiful journey of profound faith and immense healing, I softly, warmly invite you to beautifully subscribe to this quiet channel today. Doing so will seamlessly, entirely allow us to stay deeply, beautifully, and intimately connected, gently ensuring that you can easily, continuously receive more of my deeply comforting, profoundly uplifting messages whenever your beautiful, weary soul needs reassurance. It is completely, entirely an invitation of profound love, beautifully designed to continuously, fully nourish your incredibly precious spirit and heart, perfectly keeping you entirely anchored in my absolute truth as you bravely step into your completely glorious, entirely new season of profound abundance. Every step you take from this profoundly beautiful moment forward will be perfectly, intimately guided by my completely divine wisdom, beautifully ensuring that your massive financial resources always bring profound, lasting joy, completely pure peace, and entirely magnificent kingdom impact, completely effortlessly forever. You'll beautifully, continuously look back on this incredibly difficult, extremely painful season of profound lack and deeply realize that it was the greatest, entirely most important foundational training for the massive, completely glorious future you possess. The immense, absolutely terrifying stress that entirely consumed your beautiful mind for so long has been completely, permanently, safely dismantled, perfectly, entirely replaced by an absolutely profound, beautifully unshakable confidence in my infinite ability to continuously, generously provide for absolutely all your needs. Allow my completely perfect, beautifully calming peace to deeply, entirely settle over your entire being right now, totally reassuring you that the incredibly heavy, entirely impossible financial mountains have already been miraculously, permanently moved completely out of your beautiful, destined path today safely. You are entirely, completely equipped with profoundly deep, incredibly divine wisdom to perfectly, beautifully make the absolute best, entirely correct financial decisions, gently guided entirely by my softly whispering, beautifully comforting spirit rather than driven by fear. The beautifully profound, incredibly deep well of absolute, entire financial abundance that I am incredibly, entirely opening up perfectly flows forever, completely ensuring that your newly found prosperity will absolutely never, ever run dry, but will continuously, miraculously multiply to profoundly bless every generation. The completely beautiful, deeply, entirely transformed financial mindset is an incredible, profound victory that I completely celebrate with absolute, endless joy, fully knowing that you will now beautifully use your newly, entirely acquired resources to completely, massively bless the hurting world today entirely. The absolutely incredible, totally profound cycle of continuous, terrifying financial defeat is permanently, entirely shattered, beautifully replaced by an entirely magnificent, incredibly glorious legacy of profound, entirely generational wealth, immense generosity, and complete, unending spiritual peace forever. I am incredibly, entirely, deeply proud of your beautiful, unwavering faith, your completely brave, incredibly courageous perseverance, and your entirely profound trust during the absolute darkest, most terrifying valleys of deep lack. And your massive, completely spectacular reward has absolutely, officially, permanently arrived. You are entirely, completely stepping into an incredibly magnificent, profoundly glorious divine timeline where entirely beautiful, entirely unexpected financial miracles will completely, beautifully become a completely, entirely regular, immensely joyful occurrence in your deeply faithful, totally beautiful, and entirely deeply trusted journey forward. I completely, incredibly, profoundly declare entirely absolute, deeply total, and completely, incredibly massive financial freedom over your totally beautiful, profoundly, entirely precious life, entirely, completely, right now. Perfectly, totally releasing you from every entirely complete, entirely absolute debt. Step forward with entirely renewed, deeply profound confidence, absolute, unbroken faith, and a beautifully joyful, entirely grateful heart, completely ready forever to perfectly, beautifully embrace the massive, absolute, spectacular financial breakthrough that is completely yours today, safely secured by my perfect, eternal love.